Over 100 workers lose their lives. 100,000 are injured each year in powered industrial truck accidents. Proper operation of forklifts is vital to the safety and efficiency of all lumber yards. Recent studies indicate over 78% of all forklift accidents are caused by the operator. The National Lumber and Building Material Dealers Association, the NLBMDA, has produced the Forklift and You to assist independent lumber yards just like yours in preventing a tragic scene like this. Forklift accidents not only cause pain and human suffering, but also can be a tremendous cost for your employer. Forklift accidents resulting in serious injury can cost from $300,000 to $500,000, and forklift accidents resulting in a fatality can cost up to several $1 million. The only way to reduce forklift accidents is through an effective training program that informs all operators on the theory and procedures for operating a forklift. The training program must include both classroom and actual operational training on every forklift that will be operated by an employee. Your employer must ensure that all forklift operators have the capability to safely operate their forklift. Don't you become a victim. Stay alert, pay attention, and make notes during this program. The life you save may be your own. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, has regulations that govern the safe operation of forklifts in your workplace. These regulations can be found in OSHA's General Industry Book, Section 29 CFR 1910.178. Your employer always has a copy available for employees to view, and the regulations are given in the appendix of your operator's workbook. On December 1, 1998, OSHA published the long-awaited final rule on powered industrial truck training. This makes dramatic changes in the way forklift operators must be trained. With the thousands of heavy, bulky products sold in today's lumberyard, it's impractical to move everything by hand. Forklifts are used for efficiency and the safety of employees. This video-based training program will guide you through the basics of forklift operation and how those basics apply to the use of forklifts in a lumberyard. You should have your student guide close at hand as we travel through the sections of this program. The forklifts that are seen in this video may or may not be the same as what is found in your lumberyard. Remember that each forklift has specific operating instructions. They should always be consulted before operating any new forklift. In fact, OSHA requires that you be trained on every forklift you operate before you're expected to operate that forklift as part of your duties. These are the forklifts you'll be seeing in our video. Each forklift is different. We won't be showing you how to operate each individual forklift, but we will guide you through the general principles of safe, efficient, and professional forklift operation. Now, let's look at the basics of forklift operation and how your forklift manages to lift those heavy loads with ease. All forklifts work on the principle of balance. The load has to be properly balanced to permit safe lifts. In this case, Sue is able to balance Jeff on this board due to the location of the center of gravity. Here, you see two 100-pound weights that are equally balanced when the fulcrum is exactly in the middle. In this drawing, you see how the change in weight causes the center of gravity to move. To make the weight balance, we have to move the fulcrum point so 2/3 of the weight is resting on just 1/3 of the board. This is the exact center of gravity, and the entire load is now balanced. When delivered to your lumberyard, these forklifts have a center of gravity that allows them to remain upright without tipping over. Then, what causes a forklift to tip over? The combined center of gravity of all forklifts must rest in the stability triangle, as shown in this graphic. As long as the combined center of gravity stays within the stability triangle, the load is balanced, and the forklift will not tip over. As you can see, when the combined center of gravity touches or gets outside of the stability triangle, the forklift becomes unstable and will tip over. Since forklifts are designed to be stable in their natural state, there must be something that causes them to get outside of the center of gravity and become unstable. As you see here, the forklift is not beyond capacity, and the combined center of gravity remains within the stability triangle. When we add more weight than the lift can handle, our combined center of gravity touches or moves outside of the stability triangle, and the forklift will tip over. Not only can the weight you're carrying cause the center of gravity to move outside the stability triangle, how fast you operate the forklift, braking, quickness of loading and unloading, and running on inclines are dynamic forces that can quickly change the combined center of gravity without the weight changing at all. There are two basic types of forklifts: counterbalanced, as we see here, and non-counterbalanced, as we see here. A counterbalanced forklift has a very heavy weight added to the back of the unit. This adds counterbalance to allow the forklift to handle heavy loads without touching or going outside of the stability triangle. A non-counterbalanced forklift does not have a heavy weight at the back of the forklift. That is why it's called non-counterbalanced. A non-counterbalanced forklift brings the load above the wheels or between the wheels to keep the combined center of gravity within the stability triangle. There are several different fuel sources for forklifts. Here we see the diesel engine of a counterbalanced forklift. This is the engine of a counterbalanced forklift using liquefied petroleum gas, also called propane. This non-counterbalanced forklift also uses diesel fuel for its power source. We've now covered the principles of forklift operation. You should understand how a forklift handles those heavy loads. At the end of your day, you'll normally get into your car or truck to travel home. Forklifts are very different than a car or truck. After all, you wouldn't drive a forklift to and from work each day, would you? Your trainer should now stop the tape, and you may discuss the information we just covered. In this section of the program, we'll look at what needs to be accomplished in a daily pre-operational checklist. In some jobs, employees can come in and start working hard. But a professional forklift operator knows that he must check out his forklift before starting a work shift. In fact, OSHA requires the forklifts you'll be using to be checked before each shift they'll be operated, even if they were just checked the previous shift. You must never use a forklift, even briefly, until the daily pre-operational check has been performed. A simple daily pre-operational checklist can help prevent potentially tragic accidents, as well as lost time and company funds. A professional forklift operator knows that he isn't qualified to make mechanical repairs to his forklift. When repairs are needed for safe operation, always put the forklift out of service and remove the key until repairs can be made. The key should also be tagged out of service and given to the authorized person in your company to make certain no one can accidentally get to the key. Always call a qualified mechanic when repairs are needed. Make certain the mechanic is informed of all items that are deficient so complete repairs can be made. Only repairs authorized by the manufacturer or factory-approved repair service are permissible. This is a good time to remind you about how to get on and off your forklift. Always use the three-point stance. This means you should have at least 3 points of your body in contact with the surface at all times. 1 hand and 2 feet, or 1 foot and 2 hands. This applies for both getting on and off of your forklift. You may think jumping off will save time, but you never know what can happen. A shortcut may be a quick way to an accident. Now, let's get on with the checklist. Your daily pre-operational checklist is broken down into 2 main categories: visual and operational. First, make certain the key is not in the ignition. Next, make certain the parking brake is set. Then check that the shift is in neutral. Check all hydraulic controls to relieve any stored pressure. After making certain the surface is level, you may begin the checklist. First, check for any dings or dents to the body of the forklift. Always look at the rollover cage as you go. Inspect all portions for any damage. Look at visible welds and inspect for any breakage. As you work your way around the forklift, also inspect the tires. Run your hand over the surface of the tires to look for any pieces missing or foreign objects in the rubber. Pneumatic tires should be at the manufacturer's recommended pressure. Always check the lug nuts to make sure they're secure. If there's any doubt, they should be checked with a torque wrench to the manufacturer's specifications. As you continue your inspection, look at the data plate. Make sure it's readable at all times. As you complete an item, check it off the list. Always look for fluid leaks. Never put your hands or any portion of your body under the lift to perform this check. After the forklift has been moved, check the relative position of the leak and what kind of fluid may be missing. Check the seat for tears or rips. Although a rip in the seat may not always be cause to put the lift out of service, it should be noted on the report. Always check the operator restraint device or safety belt to make certain it has no nicks, cuts, or foreign material. It should fully extend and lock into the receiver. Safety warning decals must remain visible at all times. OSHA requires an operator's manual to be readily available for use by the operator. Forks should be inspected for wear. If the back of the fork is worn 10% or more, the forks must be replaced. Consult the operator's manual on how to check fork thickness. Inspect the forks for any warping or skewing. Make certain the fork locks are operable and properly set. The stops should be in place and able to keep the forks from sliding off the bar. Take one more quick look at the outside of your forklift. Some forklifts have openings or gauges to check fluid levels without opening the engine compartment. Check these fluid levels before opening the engine cover, and then open the engine cover to begin the engine checks. Check all remaining fluid levels. Also perform other required checks while the engine cover is open, including any belts. Add fluids as necessary. Make note of adding fluids so the person responsible for forklift maintenance can see if a forklift is using excessive fluids. You're now ready to shut the engine cover. Make sure the cover is secure. This is just a general procedure for performing visual inspections. Always consult the operator's manual for any special items that need to be checked on your forklift. Before we start the forklift, we need to check a few more items. Check the steering for play before starting the engine. All pedals and operating controls need to be physically checked for play and wearing. Now that our visual inspections are complete, if there are no items that would prohibit you from starting your forklift, you may proceed. If the visual inspection shows even one item that would affect the safe operation of your forklift, then do not continue. Tag it out of service. Before placing the key in the ignition, always secure your restraints. Check all controls to make certain they're in the neutral position. Check to see if anyone is around you before starting the forklift. Turn the ignition key as per the instructions in the operations manual. Listen to the sound of the engine. Does it run smooth or rough? As you rev the engine, does it continue to run smooth? Note any potential problem on your checklist. Check the steering for firm, safe turning to the left and then the right, and make sure you bring the steering wheel back to the straight position. Check the service brake for proper operation. It should firmly grab and stay in place. Slowly put the forklift into gear and make certain the service brake will hold the lift without movement. After applying the parking brakes, slowly let off the service brakes to verify the parking brakes will hold your forklift. Check the horn for proper operation. This is considered a safety item. The forklift must not be used without an operating horn. Verify operation of the backup alarm. Verify your warning lights are working. After again checking for no one in the area, raise the forks slightly to check for operation. After checking for proper clearance, raise the forks to full height and lower. Note any problems with the operation. After lowering the forks, check the mast tilt in both directions. If your forklift is equipped with side shift, check it for proper operation. After you've completed your operational check, turn off the forklift, set the parking brakes, and complete the checklist. Make any notes that may be needed on the operational items. If any safety items are defective, the forklift must be placed out of service until repairs are completed. Put the checklist where it is to be stored. You've now completed the daily pre-operational checklist for your forklift. Remember, every forklift must be checked before each shift. Once you've verified each forklift you may operate has been checked, you can begin operation. If your checklist indicated fuel needed to be added, now is the time, before the engine gets hot for the day. Never smoke in or around the fueling area. Make sure a fire extinguisher is readily available. Your forklift should be turned off, the parking brake set, and the forks lowered. Always verify you're adding the correct fuel. Be careful you don't overfill and spill fuel. Properly replace the fueling nozzle and make sure the cap is firmly placed on the unit. Never underestimate the importance of warning labels. They serve as constant reminders on what should and should not be done. In some cases, labels will even show you how to perform an operation. Be aware of what your labels say and where they're located. Missing or illegible labels should be noted on the checklist. Your trainer should now stop the tape, and you may discuss the information we just covered. This section shows the situations you may confront on a daily basis as a forklift operator in a lumberyard. Since you know the basics of forklift operation and how to perform the daily pre-operational checklist, we're ready to begin. Before you drive your forklift, check your work area for debris. If you'll be working in a small area, it can all be checked before starting. If you work throughout the yard, you'll have to check each area as you approach. When you come to something on the driving surface that could hinder the operation of your forklift, don't just drive around it. Pick up the debris and place it in its proper location. Now that you're ready to pick up a load, you must remember the correct procedures. Always approach your load squarely, with forks spread to the maximum amount that will still allow you to get under the load. If you need to spread the forks, make certain the forklift is turned off, the gear is in neutral, and the parking brake is set. Be careful that you never put your hands within the mast structure. Any sudden loss of hydraulic pressure could cause serious injury. The mast should be vertical to ensure proper entry under the load. When the mast is tilted too far forward, you may hit the top of the load underneath and damage the materials. When the mast is tilted too far backwards, you may hit the bottom of the load you're picking up. Avoid hitting loads at the improper loading point. This can not only cause material damage, but can cause adjacent materials to fall, creating a hazardous situation. Always place the load as close to the heel of the forks as possible. If the load is not as deep as your forks, be careful that you don't go all the way under the load and hit something on the other side. This can cause material damage and even serious injuries. After the load is to the back of the forks, slightly raise the load, just enough to clear the material below. You may now tilt the load, being careful you've cleared the material below with the back of your load. Once you're certain the lower material has been cleared, lower the load to a safe travel distance above the surface. Now you're ready to move your load to its intended location. Let's look at another important part of operating your forklift safely: pedestrians. Pedestrians may not always be looking out for forklift traffic. When pedestrians talk, they may not be paying attention to things happening around them. Always come to a complete stop and allow pedestrians to move out of your way. Don't depend on them stopping for you. If people are in a place where you'll be operating, ask them to move to a safe location. Let's continue now by looking at some loads that may be unique to lumberyards. When moving very long loads, you must be very careful to lift in the center. Always lift very slowly. Check both ends to make certain they're lifting at an equal distance. If one end of the load is lower than the other, lower your forks and reinsert the forks closer to the end that is low. You may sometimes be lifting loads that don't have good lifting points. When stacking any cylindrical materials onto forks, make certain the mast is tilted to keep them from rolling. If you need to move several items, they should be banded together or somehow secured to make the load stable. Now that we've lifted a few loads, let's look at how we place a load. Always check the area you'll be placing a load for debris, stability, and that it is large enough to receive the load. Some loads will require boards to be put down before you place the load. Make sure the boards are spaced to support the load and allow exit of the forks. Always make sure you have properly secured your forklift before getting off. Just like when picking up a load, you need to approach the placing point squarely. Lift the load enough to clear what it's being placed upon. Stop just short of where the load will be placed to allow room for the forward tilt. Tilt the load level and adjust your location to the final resting position. Lower the load and check to make sure it's exactly where you want it. Lower the forks just enough to allow them to be removed from the load, but not to drag. Always remember to look both directions behind your forklift when backing up. Now, let's look at some other loads you'll find in your daily forklift operations. When approaching this placement, we must remember that we previously learned about checking the area for stability, debris, and other objects that could pose danger. After checking your conditions and squaring to the stack, you're ready to lift. Slow, cautious lifts are the best way to proceed. Keep your eye on the load at all times. Once you've cleared the lower material, you're ready to slowly move in. We need to constantly remember everything we've learned about fork length, mast tilt, and speed. When the load is just short of its final location, tilt the mast to a vertical position. You're now ready to gently place the load onto the stack. Always keep your eyes on the load. When it's set in place, check carefully for stability of the entire stack. Now, lower the forks just enough to clear the load. You can now check behind you and prepare to back up. You need to back up straight to make certain the stack is not hit. High stacks are inherently more unstable and are subject to falling. Use your peripheral vision to detect any movement around you. Some materials are light in weight, but bulky to handle. Follow all previous guidelines for handling and remember one very important item. When handling loads that block your forward vision, you must always operate the forklift in reverse. Forklifts are made to travel in reverse for extended periods of time. In fact, some operators may spend a large portion of their day driving their forklift in reverse. Since you've checked the data plate on your forklift as part of the daily pre-operational checklist, you know the capacity, but you may not know the weight of your load. This operator knows it's smart to make certain his forklift has the capacity to handle any given load. Always check with your supervisor if a load you're moving isn't listed. Many of you will be operating your forklift on a dock. There are several specific safety procedures required before driving onto a truck or trailer bed. First of all, the truck driver must set the parking brakes. After the parking brake has been set, you or the truck driver must put the wheel chocks in place. Your lumberyard may have specific guidelines on how and where you should place the chocks. Many lumberyards place signs on the dock as a reminder to truck drivers and forklift operators. This sign is printed in reverse to allow a truck driver to read it when looking through the rearview mirrors. After placing and securing the proper dock plate, the floor must always be inspected. Never operate your forklift on a floor that may not handle the weight. Finally, you may place your load. Always follow the same procedures when loading or unloading. Forklifts are intended to hold only one person, the operator. Never allow riders on your forklift, no matter how many may want to ride. Sometimes you may have to get a load wider than the opening into a building. This operator has found an efficient and professional way to handle the task. Loading drywall can be tricky. Drywall comes in many different lengths, but 8, 10, 12, and 16 feet are common lengths found in lumber yards. Drywall requires special handling. It's not as durable as wood products. It can easily break or be damaged. Handle the loads carefully. Use lumber or pieces of drywall for separation of lifts. Get familiar with how drywall handles on your forklift before attempting to lift larger loads. Even small loads can be difficult because they may not have enough support to keep from breaking. Most lumber yards handle many types of roofing products. Rolled felt, rolled roofing, and shingles are among these products. Here we see shingles being loaded. Pallets of shingles are quite heavy, but they can also be fragile. Shingles are easy to damage. During material handling operations, a single bump on the corner of a bundle could make the entire bundle useless. Proper loading, unloading, and handling of shingles will save thousands of dollars each year in a typical lumber yard. A professional forklift operator knows that most shingles would only be stacked 2 pallets high. Stacking them any higher can cause material damage or, in some cases, personal injury. Most lumber yards use every possible storage area. Mezzanines are found in the majority of lumber yards. When loading or unloading from a mezzanine, only remove the safety railings when operations are in progress. Always move the pallet or forks close enough so the person loading will not be put in any danger of falling. Replace the railing immediately. Know the load limits of your mezzanine and never exceed the capacity. Material damage, structural damage, and personal injury can occur if the mezzanine is overloaded. Safe speed limits must always be obeyed in your lumber yard. You're not in a race. Most lumber yards don't have traffic cops checking for speeding. When you first learn to operate your forklift, you'll naturally go slower. As you gain experience, don't get so comfortable that you forget forklifts are not intended to be operated at even moderate speeds. Keeping your speed down will help make your lumber yard a safe, efficient, and professional place to work. The goal of this program is to keep you from getting into an accident. Should an accident become unavoidable, there are some things you can do to protect yourself. This operator is demonstrating one of the techniques for bracing. In this method, both feet are planted firmly on the floorboard, arms outstretched to firmly hold the steering wheel, and he leans back into the seat. The second method of bracing again has feet firmly planted on the floorboard and hands firmly grasping the steering wheel, but the operator leans into the steering wheel. You may adjust the method depending on the style of forklift and your body size. An efficient forklift operator knows just how to load a delivery truck to make unloading easier for the truck driver. Proper balancing of the truck weight must also be kept in mind. Unbalanced loads can cause the truck to become unstable while making turns. An improperly loaded truck will also be difficult to tie down. Many of you will have to unload lumber from rail cars. There are several different styles of rail cars, but all have some similar safety precautions. Special wheel chocks are made for rail car wheels. Before unloading a rail car, you must attach the chock. There are different styles of chocks available. This type of chock blocks both sides of the wheel. If the rail car can move in either direction, you must use this type of chock or 2 single-direction chocks. Most rail cars have specific instructions for unloading. Even though rail cars are very heavy, they can be tipped over if proper unloading instructions are not followed. If there's any doubt on how to unload a rail car, call the shipper or your railroad agent. This is a coordinated team of forklift operators. When working together, they can quickly unload a rail car. They always follow safety procedures and verify the rail car wheels are chocked. They keep the rail car balanced by unloading from both sides at one time. It's important to make certain one operator doesn't get too far ahead in removing loads. If you must unload a rail car by yourself, frequently alternate sides. This will keep the rail car balanced and prevent tipping. Safety regulations on lifting personnel with a forklift may vary from state to state, but one thing is always the same. Never lift anyone while they're standing just on the forks, a pallet, or any other load. A cage must be used that allows forks to be inserted. Some type of fastening system should hold the cage to the backrest. On this cage, a chain fastener is used. Some states require the person being lifted to be secured to the cage. This is done using a safety harness and lanyard. Safety belts are no longer acceptable under OSHA regulations. Wire mesh or some other type of see-through covering keeps the person being lifted from accidentally getting caught in the mast assembly. The forklift operator must stay in the seat and watch the person being lifted. If the operator has to get off the forklift for any reason or any safety problems develop, the cage should immediately be lowered to the surface. Never move a forklift with someone in a cage unless the cage is fully lowered to traveling position. That should only be done for short distances. Your trainer should now stop the tape, and you may discuss the information we just covered. This section will deal with truck-mountable forklifts. These are the forklifts you'll see operating during this segment of the training program. As you can see, there are many different styles of non-counterbalanced or truck-mountable forklifts. As with counterbalanced forklifts, you'll have to have training on any truck-mountable forklift that you operate. It's vital that you understand how to read all gauges and operate all controls. Some gauges and controls on truck-mountable forklifts may look the same as with a counterbalanced forklift, but you'll also see some very different gauges and controls. Some can be basic. Others may be more complicated, and some are very detailed with high-tech display panels. Let's stop at a job site to see what procedures need to be followed. Safety is always the most important factor. As your truck comes to the unloading point, you should turn on your flashers. The first thing to do is pick a safe unloading location. Before you walk into the street, always check for traffic. Place safety cones or barricades at a safe distance behind your truck. This will keep traffic away from the area you're unloading. You must follow all of the basic procedures for safe forklift operation, whether in the lumberyard or at a job site. These operators know they must check the condition of their operational surfaces before driving on them. Look for debris that could cause an accident or damage tires. This also gives you time to determine where loads will need to be placed. Since counterbalanced forklifts are not intended to be mounted on the back of a truck, there are automatically some differences in operating procedures. Before you can use a truck-mountable forklift, it must be taken off the truck. This is a procedure we call demounting. All truck-mountable forklifts have slightly different methods for performing this procedure. The forklift operator's manual will give you specific instructions for demounting. Never take any shortcuts. You're working with suspended weights that need to be handled in a safe manner. Mounting your forklift is essentially the opposite of demounting. All of the exact same steps should be followed, generally in reverse order. You again must check the operator's manual for complete instructions. It's very important that all fastening points be checked once the forklift is mounted. Driving down the road could cause your forklift to come loose. Not only is there potential for thousands of dollars in damage, but a serious accident could occur if someone hits the forklift. Now that we've seen how a truck-mountable forklift is mounted and demounted, let's look at some actual operations. Remember, there are some similarities between counterbalanced and truck-mountable forklifts, and some major differences. When picking up a load, your approach procedures are the same. When you're as close to the load as possible, a big difference emerges. Counterbalanced forklifts have their forks completely out front. Truck-mountable forklifts have the forks over or between the front wheels. To pick up a load, the forks must extend into the pickup point. When the load is lifted just above the surface, the forks can be brought back to their resting position. The load is then lowered for traveling. Unloading with a truck-mountable forklift also has its similarities and differences from a counterbalanced forklift. As you approach your unloading point, you must remember one very important fact. The load will be positioned in front of where it rests while traveling. You must account for this difference when stopping. That means you'll actually be stopping short of the final resting position of the load. Once the load has been placed in its proper position, the forks can be retracted. Notice that stabilizers are used on most, but not all, truck-mountable forklifts. These stabilizers keep the forklift from tipping forward when picking up or dropping a load. If your forklift is equipped with stabilizers, they must be used during loading and unloading operations. Most truck-mountable forklifts will have less capacity than the counterbalanced forklifts you'd normally use in a lumberyard. You can generally handle the same types of loads, just not as much weight. You must always consider the job site conditions when traveling with a load. Since most job sites are generally only rough graded during the delivery stage, you'll have to adjust your speed accordingly. Part of successfully operating your truck-mountable forklift may actually be accomplished by someone who never operates it. When your delivery truck is loaded at the lumberyard, weight capacities must always be considered. The forklifts in the lumberyard may handle 6,000, 10,000, or even 12,000 pounds. Most truck-mountable forklifts used by lumberyards will handle 4,000 to 5,000 pound loads. The lifting height also may be different. Your truck-mountable forklift may not be able to go quite as high as a counterbalanced forklift in your lumberyard. Many operators have found out the hard way by having to return a load to be broken down. Some forklifts even turn their wheels for operation at a 90-degree angle. They allow you to take wide loads in a narrow space. This can be very helpful in tight job sites. This is a feature that requires thorough knowledge of how your forklift operates. You must first get used to normal operations. When operating in the switched traveling mode, all steering is done at a different perspective. You're still sitting in the same seat, but are steering parallel to the direction of travel instead of perpendicular. Many lumberyards have found truck-mountable forklifts to be a valuable asset in handling materials at job sites. Operating a truck-mountable forklift requires you to constantly be aware of your surroundings. You may never deliver twice to the same job site, and even if you do, the conditions will probably be different each trip. Truck-mountable forklifts are intended to be used in a wide range of job site conditions. Some even have four-wheel drive for extremely muddy or uneven job sites. Always watch for unseen traps that could create problems for your forklift. Recently excavated trenches can cause your forklift to get stuck. Even four-wheel drive forklifts may not get free. Overhead utility wires are sometimes not at proper elevations during construction. You not only have to be aware of what's in front of you, but also what's overhead and below. We've now briefly introduced you to operations of non-counterbalanced or truck-mountable forklifts. Don't forget to read the operator's manual for complete details on how your truck-mountable forklift operates. Your trainer should now stop the tape, and you may discuss the information we just covered. In this final section, we'll cover the steps that need to be taken for you to become an authorized forklift operator in your lumberyard. You're now completing the classroom or formal portion of your training. You've been using this video, along with your operator's workbook, to learn about how your forklift operates. To complete the formal training, you'll have to take a written test. This will help your trainer to understand if there are any areas that you need additional training. You must pass the written test before being allowed to go any further with the training and testing process. Either before or after the written test, a trainer will give operational demonstrations on each forklift you'll be required to operate. Pay close attention during this demonstration. After the written test and demonstration are completed, you'll be given time to get familiar with the operation of your forklift. This is your opportunity to get to know your forklift. After you're comfortable with all operations, you'll be put through a series of operational tests in an obstacle course. You'll be graded on your ability to complete these basic maneuvers. If you miss any safety procedures, you'll have to have additional training in those elements. Another opportunity to complete the course will then be given. If you show a lack of operational capability, you'll also have to go through additional training. When you've successfully completed this portion, your trainer will allow you to move actual loads through the lumberyard. Your trainer will grade you on all aspects of your operation. You'll be asked to move different types of loads under situations encountered daily in a lumberyard. If you show a lack of operational capability at any time, your trainer will stop the evaluation. You may require additional training. After you've successfully completed the operational evaluation, you'll become an authorized forklift operator for your lumberyard. You'll have to complete some elements of the training program for all forklifts you'll operate. The National Lumber and Building Material Dealers Association hopes you've both enjoyed and learned from this training program. Forklift safety is a vital part of your lumberyard's overall employee safety program. The owners of your lumberyard have made a commitment of company funds to outfit employees with effective material handling equipment. They're now investing additional funds in educating you to operate that equipment. With each day's experience, you become better at operating your forklift. You'll eventually be able to operate all controls and pedals just like your trainer. Part of an overall forklift safety program calls for evaluation of operators at least once every 3 years. The evaluation helps to catch any bad forklift operating habits you may have developed. Additional training may be required any time you're involved in an accident or near-miss accident. Whenever new forklifts, attachments, or operating conditions are introduced, you'll receive training on those aspects. Congratulations! You're on your way to becoming a safe, efficient, and professional forklift operator.